Welcome back to my channel. As you saw in the intro, we will learn how to do this kind of scenes. This is one of the amazing shots that shown in the series The Mandalorian, and I liked it right away. In this first part, we will go through full modeling for the scene, making some models and importing others, and placing green vegetation around the building site. So without any further ado, let us jump into it. Start by deleting the default objects, then, from Shift-A, go to Empty and select Image. It's a screenshot that I took from the episode, and we will use it as a reference image in modeling this scene. Scale the image as you see fit. The thing is, in this tutorial, we're gonna rely on proportions between objects rather than actual scale and measurements. So, from Add, place a cylinder in the scene. In the settings here, increase the vertices count to 64 for smoother shape. Make the radius 9 and the depth 7 in value for now. After that, level it with the ground. In this part of the building, the walls are not vertical, so, to mimic this, we will select the top face of the cylinder and scale it down. Switch now to front view. Use Ctrl-R to add cuts on this cylinder, and matches them with the ones in the reference image. So, I need 4 main cuts first, then we're gonna edit the areas between them. Once you added those cuts, let us finish the top part. This area here is off 4 steps, and I will use extrude and scale commands to give it the basic shape, and later on we will add some smoothness to it with bevel. Now in the first dome, you need to move this edge up, and give it a good length, before scaling it down. In the upper parts, it's not that visible in the image, so, I will insert this face and then, use extrude to extend it top, and again, I will repeat the extrude scale process to shape those overhangs. And as before, in this dome, we will extend this edge with a good length to top, and then, we scale it down to fit. Now that we've finished, let's go back and fix some areas. In this bottom one, add some cuts and match them with the image. Hold Alt key to select those faces and scale them to outside along X and Y axis only. Here, to add this step, I will select those faces, and extrude it to outside a bit using the scale command. To start modeling the main door, move the image away from the building, then, add a plane in the scene. Press G to move it in front of the door and use R to rotate it like shown. The door is of two parts, so we will do the one on the right and copy it once we finished. Now, press Tab to enter edit mode, and with edges selection, move the plane edges to match the right side of the door. You can check the alpha in the image settings to control the opacity in it. And also in the outline, we will freeze the image by turning off this arrow icon, so this process will contain cuts with both loop cuts and knife tools. I'm using Ctrl R to add cuts around the gaps in the door image. I did here turn on the snap to make those vertices on the same horizontal level. So, once you finished with the loop cuts, use the knife tool to make those slide ones. With the knife tool, you will select the first point, then the end point and hit bar space to apply the cut. Here, I pressed C to lock the knife movement to horizontal only. Once you finished with the cuts, switch to face selection and highlight those faces as you see, then extrude them to inside a bit. Also in this edge, extrude it to inside and to the left a bit. Now, use Shift D to make a copy of this side to the left and apply mirror on the X or Y axis depending on your scene, then, snap it to the first part. After that, select them both and hit Ctrl J to join them. Again, add a new plane, this time for the columns, so, move the plane with the G, rotate it, and snap it to the door. In edit mode, use edges selection to shape it. Add some thickness to it with extrude, and copy it to the right side. Then, using the same column that we made, we will copy it top, and shape those parts over the door. When you are selecting vertices from ortho, it's preferred to be on wireframe view. You can access it by holding Z and place the mouse over wireframe, and again, the image is not that detailed, so it depends on what you can see from it. Here, I will make another part to connect the columns with the last one that we made. I added 2 cuts to it and extrude those faces along their normal. Now, while in edit mode, press A to highlight all, then press Ctrl B to bevel the edges. You also need to go back into object mode, and hit Ctrl A to apply scale. We do that for the bevel to work as it should. Position this part as you see fit, and once you're done, copy it to the right side. Make another copy of the columns and scale it down as shown. We need it to match this little parts here. Once you placed it, use Shift D to make one copy of it, then, hit Shift R to repeat the process. Join them once you finish. Last part here is the top cover. Using a copy of this part, we will shape it in edit mode. I will make it as simple as possible, but you can spend some time on it. select this bottom face and extrude it top. Make sure it's not intersecting with the top one. I'm also going to add 2 loop cuts to stretch the mesh on both X and Y axes. After that, add a subdivision modifier to it and make the subdivide 2 in value. Before applying the modifier, we can use loop cuts to edit the shape. Now, to smooth the shape, we will bevel some edges in it. Just remember to apply scale in object mode before beveling the shape. Holding the Alt key for this ring selection, then press Ctrl B and with the mouse wheel, increase the smoothness in the area. I did extrude those top faces a bit. Now, to make those green parts around the building, I will select one of those edges and copy it, then hit P to separate selection. After that, from Object menu, convert this edge to curve. This way we have the curve settings here. In the geometry, change the numbers a bit to end up like this. With this shape, convert it back to mesh, and in edit mode, delete those 2 edges to end up with a cube that goes along with the building walls. Scale it around as you see fit. Also, select those edges and bridge them to cover the gaps. Once you've finished, change the origin of this part to cursor, and press Shift D to copy it around the building. Select all the copies and join them. After that, copy the new object top as shown, and scale it around to fit. Now back to the door. After moving it in place, from the side view, select all the part except the top cover and rotate them to match the walls. Also, delete the parts intersecting with the door from the object we made last. We're also gonna move those faces to inside, so just work it around until it fits, and finish placing the door part in their position. In this part here, we will highlight all and press Ctrl B to bevel the edges. In the columns, select the bottom faces and scale them first on their z-axis by 0 value, then scale them up on both x and y as shown, and again, once you've finished, press Ctrl B to bevel the edges. Here, to smooth the edges in this part, we can use the bevel modifier. Now back to the walls. To add those gaps here, we need extra cuts in the wall. Add them with Ctrl R. Now select those faces on both sides and extrude them to inside, then, use Insert and Extrude again to add another step to it. Those faces also will have an extrusion to inside, and bevel the edges once you finish. So, by now, you are familiar with the process. I will select some edges in this building and smooth them with the bevel tool. Just remember to apply scale in object mode first, and again, you can select all those ring edges by holding the Alt key. Now, to make the site, starting with a plane, scale it up to fit, then add 2 cuts to extend the part in front of the door. So, select this edge and hit E to extrude it. In the side areas, add 2 cuts and extrude the resulted edges there. Now, with face selection, select all and extrude it bottom a bit. Try adding another step with insert and extrude commands. After that, apply scale in this object, and select the edges in those corners to bevel them. Finally, add a bevel modifier to smooth all the edges in the object. To close the site, we will use a cube and shape it like a wall, snap it to this corner here, and extend it in edit mode like shown. Once you've finished, make a copy to the left side and mirror it. I did also add a new plane to cover this area here. This surface will be water, so, scale it up and move it down to its level. To add those details in the wall, we need some cuts in it. Then, we select those faces and extrude them to outside. Smooth the walls once you've finished. Here, I am just organizing the objects in separate collections. Now, press Shift A to add a camera in the scene, and once you are on a view you like, hit Ctrl, Alt, number 0, to place the camera in your view as shown. In the dimension settings, I will make it 840 in the Y for now. I need it to be wide shot. Then in the camera focal length, change it to 28, and use the Shift value to control the shot. The first dome is not that visible in the frame, so I will try to fix it with scale. The green elements here is too much apart, so I will delete it and copy it again with smaller offset, but, if it's fine with you, leave it as B. Now, we will model some of the elements in the site area. Starting with the light model, place a cylinder in the scene, and move it near the light parts in the image. From the front view, try adding some cuts to it and match it with the image. We will use the same extrude and bevel process to make this shape. Here at the top, you need to scale it, then extrude it toward up. Those faces that I highlighted, you need to add an extrude to them before scaling them, keeping in mind that I am holding Shift-Z to lock the movement on their Z-axis. Now, smooth the shape using the bevel tool, and again, apply scale in object mode. Once you're done with the first model, place a cube in the scene, and let us start with the next one. The process is the same, extruding faces and beveling them either with the tool or the modifiers. Here, before I smooth the shape, I will make a copy of it and move it top for now. In this top copy, we need only some of the top faces to make second part of the model, so, Place it now over the bottom part. In edit mode, add some cuts to match the reference image. Once you finish here, select those edges and bevel them, then delete the resulted faces as shown. After that, add a solidify modifier and increase the thickness a bit, and bevel it to smooth the shape. The third part in this model is the vertical one. Add a new cylinder, and move it in place, then, follow the same process in matching it with the image. Once you're done with the shape, extrude those faces as shown, and smooth it using the bevel tool. Finally, from the first part, select those faces and extrude them to the back, then again, bevel the new extrusion. Turn on Auto Smooth after applying the smooth shade on the object. Now for this model, we will fast the process a bit. Feel free to slow down the video if you want to check any step, so take your time with it. I will comment if any new step happened. Again, it's the same extrude and bevel process with moving and scaling around to achieve the shape we need. I did here changed the pivot point to individual elements to scale each face from its center. Just remember to move it back to midpoint or active elements once you finish, because sometimes extrude don't work right with the individual option, so keep attention to that. Now, the tutorial is already long, and for this reason, I will count on you to make the rest of the models in the same way. You can also download all the models that we made, and all the new ones from the description down below. Before placing the models, I will copy this dome, press P to separate it from the main building, and place it in the scene as a side objects behind the walls. After that, in edit mode, use extrude and scale to match it with the image. Now that we finish with that, go back to the models, and start placing them in the site. Move the light model near the camera, position it over the water plane, and make some copies of it on both sides. With the rest of those site model, we will follow the same process. Move them in place, scale them to fit, and position each model from the camera perspective. After that, to the building's models, starting with this one. The thing is, with placing those models, you need to rotate them correctly first, so that when you copy them, they copy correctly as well. So with that being said, from the side view, rotate this model to match the building's walls. Then, we will move it over the door where the axes are manageable. After that, you need to select the object which they will rotate around. In this case, it's the green elements, and while it's selected, hit Shift S and choose Cursor to Selection. Now, select the model again and change its origin to 3D cursor. Rotate it around the building and it should work smoothly. Once you've finished, press Shift D to copy and rotate it to match the image. The rest of the models will be placed in the same way. So to finish the site modeling, add a cube here for the doorstep, and just scale it to fit the area. Here, I am just organizing the models in each collection. I will scale the top dome a bit to match the image. I did also rotate it a bit here, so work it as you see fit. In the dimensions, I will make it 820 here. Now, before adding the tree models, the bushes and the rocks to the scene, I will add a cube here, and scale it around inside edit mode. This object will have a grass material later to fill this area, and we will cover it with some bushes later on. So, after scaling it, add a subdivision modifier, and manage it with some cuts before applying the modifier. To start adding the pre-made models to the scene, make a new collection to organize that. From File, go to Link option, and search for the file you need. In my case, I will link the first tree, and select it from the collection folder. So, here it is. You can now look at the image and try to place it where it seems fit. Make sure it sits on water, and copy it around the site. One thing to keep in mind, when you copy a living thing, like trees or bushes, it's preferred to change the scale and rotation in each copy. This way it looks more natural. I did split the view here to manage the transformation of all the models from the camera view. Once you've finished with the first tree, add a new collection, and link the next model to the scene in it. Third one is the bonsai tree, and I need 2 copies of this one. Place it on the water first, then, make a copy from it to the right side of the door. Now for the rocks and the grass, we will need much more copies than the trees, so place them as you see fit, and use the image as a reference. Now the rocks file has 2 collections with 2 models of rocks, so you need to link the second one in the same rock collection. Finally, use the link option and select the grass file, and it's also of two collections for both the bush and the grass, so link them both and copy them around the site. And that's it for this part. See you guys in the next one. Goodbye.